In worse news, Microsoft and Google have laid off thousands of workers. And this is not deja vu. You are not watching an old WAN show from a few weeks ago. This is still happening. The tech sector is shedding workers like there is absolutely no tomorrow. Microsoft announced it is cutting 10,000 jobs. That's nearly 5% of its workers. The stated reasons include changes in consumer preferences and macroeconomic conditions. While Microsoft is cutting jobs in some areas, though, they are actually still hiring in others, notably in the AI department. I mean, we've talked about this a fair bit over the last couple of months, but GPT-3, the upcoming GPT-4, Microsoft's major investment in OpenAI seems to indicate that they are laser focused on what chatbots mean for their future business, whether it's Azure, whether it's Bing, whether it's Windows. I think we're going to see extremely deep integration.
A lot of the stuff that Microsoft has openly shown that they care about on the consumer side of things for the last very long time, Cortana, Bing, other things like that, would be aided very heavily by the popular thing in AI right now, which is large language models. So improved versions of that would be extremely valuable to Microsoft, so it makes sense.
Interestingly, Microsoft announced the layoffs on January 18th, 1 year to the day after they announced their plans to acquire Activision Blizzard for $69 billion, and 1 week after reports indicated the company plans to invest $10 billion in OpenAI. So they have money.
Interesting.
They have just chosen not to spend it on retaining workers.
So I don't have notes for this, so I'm going to say things that are wrong. I'm just prefacing it like that.
We liked you better last week.
When I just couldn't talk.
At least you didn't say anything inaccurate.
As far as I know, once OpenAI makes enough money that they can pay back whatever.
Like Microsoft's investment, you mean?
Yeah, the shares are gone and everything kind of reverts back to being owned and operated under OpenAI. So I wonder if this $10 billion investment is to try to stave that off.
Oh, I actually have no way of knowing
no clue.
The terms of...
I have no clue. I don't remember what the terms were, blah, 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 but I feel like this might be kind of like a defensive maneuver because they see them potentially doing too well too fast, so they need to up their investment potentially. I don't know. Maybe. I know nothing. Moving on.
Meanwhile, Google is cutting 12,000 employees, or around 6% of its workforce. Google's CEO stated that following 2 years of dramatic growth, Google hired for a different economic reality than the one they are currently facing. Over the course of the pandemic, Google's workforce increased by 78,000 jobs. I mean,
that's so much.
I don't know, man. See, this is the thing that's so frustrating to me, is when management gets it right, management benefits. And when management gets it wrong...
At most companies, the employees get hit.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about sustainable hiring. I think I've talked about this on WAN Show before, but basically the way that Yvonne and I forecast when we sit down and we set a budget for hiring is we look at the previous year and basically go, okay, assuming no growth whatsoever next year based on that year. So we basically build in that we could revert back to last year's performance and not grow at all. Can we afford whatever it is that we're hiring for this year? Was that clear? So our hiring budget for this year is affected by how we performed last year and assuming that the following year will be like that. What has actually happened is for 8 out of our 10 years, we have experienced significant growth. For 2 out of our 10 years, we've had what we've kind of called reinvestment years. And that's a big part of the reason that we take that approach, is because it gives us the flexibility to have a reinvestment year where we can make long-term investments that might not pay off for 2 years or 3 years. I'm expecting this year that we're in right now to be what we would call a reinvestment year. I'm not expecting, well, actually, we're forecasting less profit this year than last year. For any Linus Media Group, Floatplane, or Creator Warehouse employees who are watching, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will pay off in 2024. It'll be fine. Everything's good. And if it didn't, we'd still be able to afford it because it's all kind of based on how last year went. Anywho, I don't know. It's frustrating to me because this feels like such a management failure, and yet I pretty much promise that Google's stock went up this week. Like, here, I don't actually know.
Response stock does go up in these situations.
Do I have Google on my thing? Oh, no. Oh, wait. Yes. Google stock is up like 5% today. Genius.
Investors like it when a bunch of people get fired.
Yeah, which I don't know. Here's an alternate way of looking at it. Should investors like it when management is so incompetent that they accidentally hire 12,000 too many people that they then can't afford to pay, and presumably whose projects, whatever it is that they're working on, are now stalled? Like I don't understand this way of thinking, and it's frustrating. Yeah, Ben Mitchell in Floatplane Chat says Google stock went up 5% when they fired 5% of their employees. Maybe if they want the stock to go up 100%,
just fire everybody, including Cook.
Okay, I'm going to buy some Google real quick here. On that subject, I actually have some more details to share on my next investment that is now final. The wire has gone through. They have effectively deposited the funds. They've cashed the check. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it, but first, let's talk through the rest of this Google stuff. So affected employees from Google will receive 60 days of pay, followed by at least 16 weeks of severance. I mean, you got to at least give them credit there. That is a pretty decent severance package. Like if I had
16 weeks of severance is like,
yeah, if I had 6 months to kind of figure out what I'm going to do next.
Affected employees will receive 60 days pay, followed by at least 16 weeks severance. What's the difference here?
I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some distinction, like legally. But like Microsoft, Google's AI department is unaffected. And the speculation here is likely because of the threat that ChatGPT poses to Google's dominance. Honestly, asking ChatGPT things is so much better than Googling them.
You do have to... I know you know this.
I know, it's an old data set.
It's an old data set, and you have to remember that it will confidently be wrong. So you have to keep your mind about you. But it is... Oh, yeah.
Google search results can be confidently wrong, too.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Here's
the challenge, though. I read a really interesting article a while back. I wish I had it in front of me so I could give you guys a more accurate summary of it. But essentially, it made the argument that voice assistants, as we know them, are doomed. They're going away. The model was supposed to be that by collecting all of this information, building these natural language models, and making these voice assistants ubiquitous in our lives, either in the phones in our pockets or in the smart speakers in our kitchens or wherever else they happen to be found, in our TVs, they would somehow start to sell us things and therefore generate a value to advertisers, generating a value to the companies who have built them. As far as anyone can tell, Cortana's gone. Alexa seems to be losing copious amounts of money. The whole experiment has fundamentally failed. And what I wonder is, was the problem that they weren't good enough? Yes. That was part of it.
At least part of it, yeah.
They are fairly crap. Or was the problem that people will simply not interact with someone who is constantly trying to sell them something? So what I'm trying to say is ChatGPT going to only be a viable alternative to Google searching until it starts trying to sell us crap? And
unless it's a paid service.
If it can't successfully sell us crap, then will it ultimately just not find a way of being commercialized? Because, like, if you think about it, I don't mind looking up information by myself and being bombarded with ads. It's just kind of part of the process, whether I am seeking out information in a newspaper or TV or on a web page. But, and maybe I'm outing myself as a bit of an introvert here. If I have to communicate with someone and be sold something, I would rather just buy nothing and walk away. Like there's certain types of purchase experiences that I just I dread them. Like I was thinking, hey, I have not adorned my wife with any precious metals or jewels in a solid 7 to 8 years. Maybe we're due. I should probably take her jewelry shopping. And man, you ever gone jewelry shopping at the mall? They're like hyenas.
I hate it.
They're so aggressive.
Yeah.
You tell them, no, I'm just browsing for now. My body language is completely closed. I will preemptively, before they even get a chance to inhale, to open their mouths and start talking to me, I'll say, I'm just browsing for now, thank you. And they hover. They're practically breathing down your neck. And it drives me crazy because, and maybe I'm about to prove myself wrong, right? It drives me crazy because they wouldn't do it if it didn't work on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
But if the more natural you make the interaction for me with this chatbot or with this voice assistant or whatever it is, I feel like the more personally offended or bothered or attacked or whatever the word is, the more personally anxious I'm going to be when they try to sell me something ultimately. Does that make sense, or am I way off base here?
No, that makes sense. I think, and I'm probably going to be wrong, and they're probably going to go with a different model, and that will be super bad. But I'm really hoping they go for a prosumer type of approach and charge for it.
Not if it's Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft doesn't even charge for Windows anymore, essentially.
Yeah.
What even is Microsoft's business? It's pretty clear they're chasing that. I mean, why else would they have kept beating this dead Bing horse?
Yeah.
It's got to be an advertising model. I mean, obviously they're certainly open to software as a service. I mean, we see that with Game Pass, but again, back to what the best way to monetize something that interacts with you.
Free version, if there was a YouTube Premium Chat GPT or a YouTube Premium Bing powered by Chat GPT, whatever, I would pay for that.
Like Bing Premium.
Yeah.
It won't be though, because you don't want your brand to be sullied by the crappy version. I mean, Microsoft learned this back in the day with Windows 2000 and Windows ME. I mean, what they look at, they go, why are we maintaining a good kernel? Kernel. Why don't we just have one good kernel?
Good one.
Yeah.
There was a thread on Twitter where people were talking about what they would pay for Chat GPT powered by GPT 4.0, whatever.
Sure.
And that you and I both know that type of interaction is always useless trash, because all the people talking are like, "Oh, I'll pay whatever," and then it comes time to do it, and they don't. Pulling
your actual credit card out of your actual wallet is much higher friction than talking about how you're gonna spend money on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. It never means anything. It's completely useless conversation. But I was a little bit surprised knowing all of that. How many people were enthusiastically wanting to line up to pay for it? And I think if they made it I don't even know if it's prosumer, potentially just straight up professional application, I think they could make a lot of money from businesses. Because businesses, I think, would like powerful 4.0 powered Chat GPT reinforced employees. And you look at how much these platforms are charging companies for such basic crap.
Yeah.
But it's worth it for the company, so they just pay it anyways.
Yeah.
Like the bill for Teams.
Yeah.
Enormous.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, what are we going to not have like
Guess we'll pay for it. Like
intra-company communication? Are we just going to not have that? I guess
it's text chat when text chat was free, like 20 years ago.
I know.
But we pay out the nose. Like, it's really expensive.
Yes,
per person.
I know how much it is.
It just drives me nuts.
Thank you.
It's crazy to me.
Don't forget, we also pay for G Suite.
And then it's
and
so
Adobe
bad.
Suite.
And Slack and everything else. Yeah, it's and they're really expensive. So if you offered something that was actually powerful and wasn't literally a text chat that barely works,
yeah,
I think people would pay a lot for it as a company. Maybe not so much as a person. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because it's kind of like how we talked about the issue with real estate, where when people are buying it to live in it, the calculus is very different compared to when people are buying it based on and pricing it based on how much money they can make from it. Like, from my point of view, when I look at the cost of something, I'm looking at it in terms of how much time, which equals money, it saves. So I was talking to Dan, actually, before the show, and I was saying, hey, Dan, merch messages. Like, wouldn't it be cool if when merch messages come in, okay, so when people ask a question or something like that down here, when you guys see a response that is almost always from Dan, occasionally I reply to them. Do you ever reply to them?
To what, sorry?
Merch messages.
No.
Like the text replies? Okay, so occasionally I'll reply to them.
I didn't know you did.
Yeah, here's a reply. There's a reply right there. Usually that's handled by Dan, and he replies to people just from hearing us talk on the WAN show because he's like always here, or just from things he knows internally. He'll try to answer your questions as best he can. And I was telling Dan, I was like, hey, A, it would save you a ton of time, and B, I think it would help you filter which ones have been addressed before versus which ones we've talked about, or which ones we haven't talked about. If you could just take the transcript of every WAN show, dump it into a ChatGPT prompt, and then say, based on this library of information, what's the answer to this? You do a quick sanity check, and then you just paste it in. It's like, oh.
You can do that.
I know. Well, I know you can.
Yeah.
But how much will it cost, right?
Yeah, right now
we don't know.
Right now, nothing. But it's in a testing phase.
Yeah,
they've been very open about the fact that it's just in a testing phase.
Yeah, but what will the tools look like for that integration? Like, will there be API access so that the merch messages dashboard will properly integrate with that? So people's questions could come in automatically, run through this process, and then our dashboard could be updated so that Dan only has to see their original message and the suggested output.
Oh. So there's two things. One of them,
sure.
A bunch of people in chat were like, why don't you guys just run IRC? It's not the point. It's not the point. It's not the point. It's not the point. I'm not even going to explain the point. It's just not the point. And two, something that I think is going to be a really interesting reckoning is whenever ChatGPT's model changes and these tools that people are building that are based on it now have to react to the model change. That's going to be interesting. I know people that have sold tools built on ChatGPT for $10K plus.
Really?
To companies that are trying to buy these tools that are ChatGPT powered. And they don't seem to understand that it's just in a testing phase.
And it's going to change a lot.
Something's going to happen eventually. They're going to commercialize it some way eventually.
Like soon.
Yeah.
It seems to me.
There are people making customer support bots for commercial pages right now based on ChatGPT.
Huh.
Which, like, yeah, right now, honestly, it probably works pretty good.
Yeah, but when it costs you 10 cents a message or whatever, that...
Well, you just have no idea.
Yeah, we have no clue. No clue.
They might just yoink it.
Right. Yeah.
They might just
say,
like, okay,
hey,
testing phase is over.
Yeah, that's too many calls.
Yeah. Or that.
Yeah, forget it.
Like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that right now. That's all I'm saying. But there's some like pretty big like core feature infrastructure that is being put on ChatGPT, which is interesting.